So why did I have... her sing that song? Let me tell you about my Jesus. Quit laughing at me. Why do you think I had... go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay. How do we tell somebody about Jesus if we haven't learned what's in the Bible about Jesus?
You could always share a testimony.
Yep. So this come up last time we was in junior church. Anybody remember? It was about a month ago, right after Christmas. Dina had give y'all notebooks, and that's what we're going to talk about today is tips for taking sermon notes. But we're going to use our Bible to see why. And I was thinking about it. Why do we take notes in church? We want y'all to take notes in church so y'all have the opportunity to go home and go back and look at those notes and study it further. Tonight in teen class, we're going to talk about devotional time. So a lot of times, in my devotional time, I will use notes that John preached in church. So that's kind of what I'm going to do today is I was going to go through just tips for taking sermon notes. So basic verses here. Proverbs 3:13. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. So if we take notes in church, sometimes we don't understand a lot of what is said in church, or what John preaches, or what I'm teaching. You may not understand everything, but if you take and write down some notes, if you write down the verses, you can go back Monday or Tuesday, and y'all can look at them notes, and y'all can look at that up, and y'all can study it a little more. Or y'all can come to me later and ask me, what did I mean when I said something? So that's kind of the reason we want to take notes. Matthew 6:33. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. And that goes in line with let's study and let's learn the Word. And as we learn the Word, we can better talk to our friends that aren't saved or that's not attending church. 1 Timothy 4:13, till I come give attendance to reading and exhortation and doctrine. Exhortation and doctrine, to exhortation and doctrine. So Jesus is telling here, till I come. So Jesus is coming back one day. We don't know when that is. But He is asking us to give attendance to reading. He wants us to read the Bible. He wants us to learn. He wants us, to be able to, and when He says to doctrine, that's to teach others. 2 Timothy 2:15, study to show thyself approved unto God. So once again, we need to read our Bible and study to be approved unto God. A workman that needs not to be ashamed. We don't need to be ashamed of God. We don't need to be ashamed of the gospel. And that's really why I love that song, My Jesus. Rightly dividing the word of truth. So the Bible is truth. So that's kind of just a couple verses I pulled up to go along with why do we need to take notes. So go to the next slide, Dina. So taking notes. First things. So why we take notes? Why we take notes? So I told you it's to be able to go back and look at it. So I wrote these points down. I probably covered a little bit. It can improve your focus. If you're focusing on, so a lot of times when John teaches or preaches, and I'm going to start trying to do it when I may have, like for instance, when Brian Poindexter preached that the other night, he said he had 11 points. So when I was taking my notes, I knew there was 11 main points I was looking for, and I was listening for those 11 main points, and I was writing them down, and as he was going through there, and he would tell his points, and I would write down salvation. And that was his first point, and I wrote that down. And then he give a verse to go with it. I wrote that verse, John 3:16, but I didn't write the rest of the verse when I was taking my notes because I don't need to be sitting there writing the whole time. Taking notes helps us remember the sermon later. So once again, how'd that get up on the board from my notes? I'll be honest with you, my notes, I'm going to show you my notes in a little bit, but that actually came off Dina's notes. Dina's more legible and spells better. This is how I write my notes. Every note, all my notes are in typed format. It's the only way I can read it, and I love Google Spell Check. You can use You can use your notes in your personal devotional time. Like I said, teen class tonight, we'll be talking about devotional time. And I use my notes a lot of times in my personal devotional time. I wrote folders or binders, so things you can keep in your notes. So we give y'all, Maddie's got hers. So we've got some little things, and we'll pull them up in a minute, that we give y'all to take notes. My notes are taken in this little book, and if y'all want to understand, I keep this book with my Bible. When I'm reading my Bible, sometimes something will hit me, and I will write it in here. So you can see why I want to type my notes, okay? It is chicken scratch. I have the worst handwriting of anybody. I have the worst spelling ability of anybody. So I love Google Spell Check and Microsoft Word. Journal, spiral, notebook. So it doesn't matter what you use to write your notes in, as long as you have a way to do it. Next one, Miss Dina. All right. So things to do when you're getting ready to listen to the preacher preach. One, you need to pray before you begin. This is something you need to do every time. Why do we pray before we begin? Matthew 7:7. Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find it. So before we enter church, we need to pray for God to open our hearts. We need to pray for God's guidance, and we need to pray that God will give us something in the message. And some of y'all are scribbling as quick as you can, and I'm trying to go fast so we don't go past John. I'll feel bad if I actually keep y'all in here longer than John keeps him. Having it up here, it helps you, don't it? Up on this screen, is that a little bit more help? Yeah. I am going to attempt to start doing this, but I am trying to move quickly. Come prepared with the right writing utensil, pen, pencil, eraser, whatever you may need. So have a journal or a spiral notebook. We've given y'all some journals. We can reprint those pages for you. We can get you binders to put them in, or you can use, like I use this. Reason I use this physically, actually use specific this. This tells me this is my church book. If I have a spiral notebook at work, I have 20 spiral notebooks, and I'm going to get mixed up which one is which. They're laying on my desk, they're in my van. Look up from time to time. So if you're always looking down, you can miss something. So we don't want to try to write down everything that is said. Be sure to take note of the date and the speaker. And I'm going to show you all an example of how to do this in a minute. Before the sermon ends, write down a one-sentence summary of the whole message in your own words. So just a little short sentence about the message in your own words. Because a lot of times that sentence is actually what God showed you in that message. Because a lot of times John will preach an entire message, and I may only take one sentence away from that, and that's what I'll study on through the week. Because that's what God showed me in that message. And it would probably be something completely different than what God showed you in that message. Remember that the goal of the sermon notes taken is communication with God, not detail or beautiful notes. So this is why my notes are chicken scratch. I can usually make out the idea. You need to rest on your pen. She's going 100 miles an hour, smoke coming off hers.
If you want a copy of that, I can make a copy and bring it to you.
We can make copies of this. It's on Word. I'm sorry.
She's driving you off that looking either.
I'm sorry. This wasn't really set up as a note-taking message, but
The younger ones in here right now, some of our younger people have a hard time with spelling when they're first learning to spell. Taking notes is your personal thing, so don't feel like you have to write.
so when I was in college, a lot of my instructors would do this. They'd put it up on PowerPoints. This is Google Sheets, which is the same thing as PowerPoints. And it makes it easier for y'all to kind of follow what I'm doing. That's why I'm thinking about starting to do this on every one of them. So it's just something easier for y'all to follow. Revise your sermon notes throughout the week. This is the key thing. You can stand up. We don't have enough ceiling height to get it up any higher. We could cut the floor out and y'all could sit on the dirt in the crawl space.
You can stand up, you didn't mean to jump around and play.
No. So this is something I do a lot of times. For instance, I know 3 of you has listened to it, but anybody listen to John's message when he talked about building the wall? He done it from his living room. So Nehemiah 6:2, it's on your little thing. Your little thing with magnet. So that's the church challenge verse. So I went back, I took notes while I was watching it online. And I went back this week, read, so one of the things I done, he gave us one verse. But I went back this week and I read the entire chapter of Nehemiah. That makes that one verse, his message, stand out even more when you read everything that happened up to that point and everything that happened after that point. So that was, that's kind of how I revisited it. I decided, I didn't understand. It's been a long time since I read Nehemiah, and I wanted a little more understanding. So I went back and read the whole chapter and done some studying through it to understand why John made that our challenge verse. We need to build a wall. We need to build a wall to protect us from sin. The fence that we've got a picture of, that fence was there. We need to stay on our side of the fence and not get on the other side of the fence for sin. I don't know where this ends, Dina, but is there a next one? Okay. If you want to go to this, we'll. Okay, hit the escape button. Get rid of that.
Sermon notes at the bottom. Okay.
All right, you just have to scroll down to find these 3 pages.
Everybody's seen these little notebooks, right? How many of you've got one right now?
All right, go to my prayer needs. There's a lot of stuff in here that probably is not in y'all's notebook. There's 126 pages to this. So right here. Yep. So this doesn't have to be these books. It can be just this.
Mine's completely different than his. I mean, I've got sections where I've got one for we'll start teaching class, one for in here, one for preaching.
So right here, this one's an example. You can do this in a notebook. My prayer list is not in this book. My prayer list is somewhere else. Right now, it's laying on the top step of my stairs. We'll talk about. I'm going to throw this out there. We're going to talk about this devotion time. But you need to have a place in your house to pray, free of distractions. That is the key thing: free of distractions. Because if you're praying in the living room and Noah's sitting there watching Barney the dinosaur on TV, you're going to be distracted. I know you watch Barney the purple dinosaur. Your daddy told me. No, I'm just speaking. Barney may not even be around anymore. I don't know. I don't think it was my kid's age when he was around the purple dinosaur. Anyway, so my prayer needs. So you need to have a place where you're writing down things that you want to pray for every day. You want to write down your friends you need to pray for every day. You want to write down things that need to be on it. You need to have your preacher on this list. You need to have your mom and dad on this list. You need to have your brothers and sisters on this list. You need to have your friends on this list. But you need to have a list of things to remember to pray for, because you will forget to pray for them. If you're anything like me, you will forget to pray for them. All right? So every one of y'all's names is on my list. And every one of y'all are prayed for between 10 and 11 o'clock every night. My prayer time is right before I go to bed, because that's the time I'm most alert. In the mornings, nobody wants to talk to me, including God. So, all right, move on. We're looking for sermon notes.
They want to be done already.
All right, sermon notes. So this doesn't matter if you're doing it in a notebook. We need to have, today is. So right here, I have...
Remember
My notes are a little bit. So right here, I have in this one right here, January 9th, 2022. So you would write down what date the sermon is. The topic on this one was, But God Is. This is one Joshua Barnes preached here in the pulpit. I watched it online because I couldn't come to church. But you want to write down the topic. In here it's got Old Testament, New Testament. You want to put the scripture passage. If there's a key word he used, and in this particular, one of the key words he used, but God is, and he said, but God is life, but God is love, but God is light. So he had wrote down some key words.
Keywords could also be if you have a preacher says a word that you don't understand, and if you write it down, you can always go back and look it up and see what it means.
All right. Sometimes you might want to write down a song somebody sung that you've never heard, that you want to go back and maybe get the music and learn how to play it, like some of you do, I know. And then, is that... All right. Words I don't understand. So here's a place, you want to write down something that's said that you don't understand, that you want to question later. Whether you want to ask me, you want to ask Dina, you want to ask Preacher John, if you want to ask John June in Sunday school class. But there's still a lot of things that said that I don't understand. Yep. So scroll on to this one. All right. So sermon notes. Things to ask. Who is the text talking about? When was the text talking about it? What? Are there any key points? So who, when, what? Are there any key points? So that's where you're going to write down 1, salvation. 2, spirit. 3, sanctuary. And then underneath those key points, you're going to maybe fill in a little bit of information about them.
Just for the record, this is one way to take notes right here. This is one way that somebody can do it. And this is another way that you can do it. Both of them are perfectly fine.
I want to show y'all something else. Can I borrow this now? I don't think it's on here. Honestly, I don't. Nope, that ain't it. It is not on here. I don't have it. So anyway, does that help y'all any at all as far as maybe a little bit of note taking? Any at all? All right. Okay, y'all, that covers everything. I hope that helps y'all a little bit in note taking. Key thing to remember in note taking, when somebody's teaching, you don't want to try not to interrupt and ask a lot of questions in note taking. But in junior church and in teen class, I do like interrupt us and ask questions. I don't mind.